We are live. We are live on the Jeff Nosine podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Lopes. Super excited to have on today Brendan Adams. What is up, brother?
How's it going, buddy?
Good, good, good. We just had a little brief conversation before we got started, and Brendan's right now in Nashville. He travels back and forth from Florida to Nashville, which is two kind of hot spots right now for a lot of young entrepreneurs and goal getters out there in the U.S. Give me a little rundown. I mean, obviously you have two Emmy awards. You've produced. You have an event you do every year. You do tons of guest speaking. You're obviously a recognized entrepreneur. Where did it all start? Like, give me a rundown of you growing up and where'd you grow up and brothers, sisters. Just for the audience to learn a little bit more about you.
I grew up in a small town in Iowa, Northeast Iowa, surrounded by cornfields. We had
Yeah.
700 people in our town. There's still 700 people in the town. And I grew up, my father was an entrepreneur. He had an ice business, so he sold packaged ice for a living. And so that was what I did with him growing up. So I got to learn from my father what it was like to work with customers. And so I literally I sold packaged ice for a living, or I sold frozen water at a young age, and that was like my first kind of entrepreneur endeavor, and so I was always like fascinated by sales, making money, and being in the business. And I ended up going to business with my father and buying the business, then sold the business, but it just taught me so many things about just customer relations and selling and speaking to people and really integrity in business. And so that really, I'm just grateful for it, thinking back on it now. But where my life changed, I always tell this story is there's one thing being an entrepreneur and business owner and all that, but then there's another of thinking like a whole nother level of what's out there and what's possible. If you know, you know. If you don't know, you don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I read the book Think and Go Rich when I was 21 years old. And the book completely transformed how I thought and made me realize you look at the stories of like Andrew Carnegie, Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, all the people that really created the foundation of what we have today, electricity, the Ford mobile, and even the steel industry, which created everything we have. These people weren't like the smartest people in terms of like a high education. What they had is they knew what they wanted. They had a burning desire. They knew how to get people around them, the right people, and delegate towards it. And they did it. And it took years, but they achieved it. And when I read that book, it made me realize like, didn't matter where I was from, what industry I was in. If I really wanted to achieve massive wealth or achieve anything I set my mind to, I could if I stuck with it and I had a burning desire and I put myself around the right people to achieve it. And so once I read that book, I mean, it changed everything from going into crowdfunding to video production to TV shows to events to investing to being in business with big names. And it's because I read the book and it changed my mind completely. And so then it led me to kind of where I'm at today.
I mean, everything you said there essentially is leadership, right? Learning how to surround yourself with the right people, never being. I actually did a post this morning, and it's funny because the four things I said was in the post this morning was never be scared to ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
Always, always, always never be scared to almost go for your goals. Like a lot of people have that fear of taking out opportunity when they see the opportunity. And that's the biggest thing with most entrepreneurs and the great ones and the ones that are trying to get up there is the risk takers, right? The ones that are not scared to
Yeah.
put everything on the line, right? And then the last is if you don't move forward, you're always one step behind everyone else. So you got to be a leader in that way, right? And that's what the greatest leaders, they're not scared to take that step and just create new industries, right? So I love that you said that with yourself and ice business. One thing your dad taught you said sales. I'm a strong believer in probably sales is probably the one of the most important things to teach young generation.
It
And it's
is.
something I always say in high school, if there's three things that we could teach our young generation is to be implied in the curriculum, it should be sales, public speaking, and just in general, just being able to get out of your comfort zone and get in front of people like that. Right. So with sales and where's your mindset with sales and teaching and learning sales and all that?
Yeah. So sales, we all should have sales because
Yeah.
everybody's selling. Heck, your kid may be selling you to get that toy,
Yeah.
or even called enrollment, enrolling people into something in your favor. Maybe you're in a negotiation with your significant other. You're trying to enroll them to get something that you want.
Yeah.
So it comes down to sales, but communication and and also persistence. Most sales happen between the 7th and 19th time somebody approaches somebody or a touch point. And so being persistent with that. And so what I learned that early on, and understanding communication, or even like there's a book I love called Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. He was a FBI negotiator.
Yeah.
Helps you understand how to negotiate and phrase different terms or questions that you ask to get the right answer and result that makes somebody feel a certain way, which turns into them taking an action towards something. If everybody understood sales and communication and negotiation, they would get more things in their favor. And so my father, he just said, hey, let's go sell more ice. And I found what were the value propositions for that specific industry and what it meant to the client. And I communicated that. But then eventually later on in life, doing different kinds of deals, I translated into, okay, how can I find the value proposition that added the most value to that person? And then what does it do to help them, the experience it makes for them, and then obviously how it helps me. So I 100% agree with you. Sales, marketing, communication, speaking. If you have them, you can do anything. Communication and speaking is the most important thing. If like there's so many companies, I can't tell you, Jeff, where I'm on the board or I'm an advisor to the company, and the CEO or founder, they may not have the best way to communicate the message of the business, which if people can't communicate the message of business, they can't attract the capital, they can't get the customers and whatnot. Yeah. Well, if you have the ability to communicate, you can be a part of that team, help them grow and make money in the process, because there's always room for somebody that can speak and communicate a message around a goal of whatever it is they're trying to achieve.
Now, when you're looking at that and in general like that, with your annual event, which is called Rise and Record. Am I right with that? Mm-hmm. Is that something? Are those things you guys go through and teach?
So Rise and Record is, and I do events all over the country, but Rise and Record is focused around rising up and sharing your story, specifically through video. And you look at sales. If you can tell great stories, you can sell. People buy into stories, but also stories are what people remember. It's what it stays in their brain. And so Rise and Record is really focused around helping people communicate their story of who they are, their business. And then, okay, how do you communicate that through a video asset? And then once you have that video asset, how do you deploy it? And that could be simple as a Instagram story, a Facebook post, or as high level as doing a digital marketing campaign, a documentary, a TV show, or even a marketing campaign that raises money.
Now, when you're talking about your story, I mean, this is something we talk about all the time on the podcast too. Is everybody's story has a unique outreach, right? We could reach out to as many people as you can, but everybody has a story that they have to learn to embrace and sell. Where is that when you're looking at it business wise? How important is that in the foundation of the growth of the business, is having a story to tell with the business?
It's so important because people want to know the story behind it. People are going to remember that. And there's two sides of this. It's your personal story. So personal branding is about who you are as a person, what you stand for, what you do. And then the business, what's the story of the business? So, and that's what becomes the brand. And so you could be communicating a story around you as an individual and a personal brand, but also you could communicate the story behind the business and how that started. And so those are both powerful things, and it's what people are going to remember. And you think about, like, I'm trying to think of a brand. I know somebody that was great at this, Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
He was one of the greatest storytellers. And when he launched products, what did he do? He told a story and he shared the experience and end result that people would get from their products. And that's what they bought into. And so that became one of the most successful companies of all time, because they learned how to communicate a story of their products and services and how it made people's lives better.
When you're looking at your industry, and obviously with COVID, like, how did you navigate through those 2 years? Because obviously public speaking is a huge part of what you do.
Yeah.
How did you navigate through those 2 years? Did you go more directly to like Zoom? Did you go where did your business take, and how did it take a big hit? Like, where were you with that aspect?
So I reinvented myself. And when COVID hit, I mean, I was sharing to you before, like 2 weeks before COVID hit, I mean, I was doing weekly speaking and I was about to come to Canada, and it was me, Kevin Harrington, and Kevin Hart, the comedian and actor. We were all speaking on the stage, and there was going to be like 2,000 people. And I was so excited. I had another videographer coming in to film all this and everything. And then COVID hit and shut it down. And then there's no speaking or anything. And what I did is I pivoted, because speaking was, yes, speak to groups, but then that was the deal flow. There's clients in the room, there's opportunity for where they're consulting, advisory projects.
Yeah.
When COVID hit, I started doing a lot more Zoom meetings. So like there's days I had 15 in a day, virtual meetings, conversation, and then that led to more deal opportunity. We're doing deals with companies and we never met in person, but we're doing constant Zoom meetings. And so that helped grow my advisory business and consulting. And then I started sitting on boards of companies, public or private, and helping them really consult with how they, well, tell their story, but also how to use video production, how to grow, how to raise money for their company, how to acquire more customers. And so it really helped me kind of focus in on that side of the business. And then once things started opening, I went back to doing more speaking. And yes, I did virtual gigs too. They're not the same. Nothing beats in-person speaking.
Yeah.
But yeah, I made a pivot. I found an opportunity and obstacle and just ran with it.
I love you said that. Pivot is such an important part of a business, is learning how to pivot at all times, and sometimes pivot when you really don't need to, just because you see there's another opportunity ahead of you, right? So being ahead of the game with yourself when you are looking at the video production aspect and all, where did that all start? Like, where'd you get into that? How'd you get into that? What was there an opportunity? Was it something educational wise in school? Like, what got you into the production aspect or the filming or the kind of the behind the scenes aspect of that?
There was a couple things. So I'm 33 now. When I was 21 years old, I got interested in just getting in front of the camera and creating content. So I had an agency that represented me. I did some modeling gigs. I did a few commercial gigs. They didn't pay much money, but it was getting experience from the camera. And then I really started enjoying creating my own video content. I'd get a videographer to film with me. It'd be motivational, inspiring. But then the beginning of my career, I was in crowdfunding. So we were helping people raise money through crowdfunding and Kickstarter, Indiegogo, these different platforms. What we found out to be the key component to raising the money for the project was a compelling video that told a great story. Here's who we are. Here's what we're doing. Here's how you get involved. Here's why it can help you. And then the call to action. And so once I realized that, I was focusing more on the video side of things. Yes, we're raising money and everything else, but I focused more on the video side of things. And then I started getting more into video production and doing my own content to build my brand. And then 2016, we created Accelerant Media Group, which was all around, we did commercials, we did campaigns and all that. And then my first TV show that came about was a guy came to me and said, hey, here's a pilot of a TV show. Can you help us raise the money for it? And the catch was, hey, if you raise the money, you could be my co-host. I was all in. I said, yes, we raised the money. We did season 1 of the show. And that was the beginning.
What was the show called?
The show Ambitious Adventures. It was a show focused on traveling the country and interviewing young entrepreneurs. And so this is early when Facebook Watch first came out. We had this show on Facebook Watch, and then we had the Entrepreneur Network distributed it. And then we went to Amazon Prime. But like, it was our first ever show. We put a lot of time and effort into it. And that was kind of where I first got my start in the TV production world. And I saw the power of what those high quality video assets could do, not only to inspire and empower and motivate people, but from a branding component of how it established a brand as a TV producer or TV host, which allowed me to charge more for what I did.
When you're doing that wholesale too, and this is a lot of entrepreneurs that are getting into the video production or trying to get into, whether it's short docs or whatnot, what was the alley, or where was the route that you took to actually to get it on Amazon Prime and all that stuff like that? Like, I think that's something that audience, there's a lot of people that are, because these platforms are massive now, right? And everybody has these apps and everybody's watching. A lot of people don't even have cable TV anymore. They're all on Netflix and Disney Plus and whatnot. When you're putting a documentary together or a TV series or something, you're trying to sell that platform to sell it to a platform. What are the steps in place that you took? And obviously you did it quite a few years ago. What year was that roughly?
So my first show was 2016, and then we did 2019.
Okay, so it's
Um,
not too
yeah,
long ago.
yeah. So I'll answer this. Everything I ever did was on traditional way.
Yeah,
So a traditional way, in let's say a film, a documentary, a TV show, what you do traditionally is you have a pitch book or a
yeah,
deck or a pilot, and you take that and you pitch it to networks. And if somebody will pick it up, normally what they would do is they will say, hey, we'll fund 6 episodes. And then you use their money to produce it with them, and then they distribute it.
yeah.
Usually you have to have a known production company or showrunner to do that. So that's the traditional way. That's the way I never went. One time I did have somebody represent me, but it never really panned out to anything. And so the other way you can do it is the Field of Dreams way. You build it and they will come. And so that's what I always did. Because I had my first show, I understood how to raise the money and I was committed to it. We raised the money through sponsorships and we sold our knowledge for money that we put into the show. And what we did is we created the show. And so we have a show on a platter and we say, hey, we got 6 episodes in the can. Here's what it is. Let's figure out a deal. And that's what we did in terms of Entrepreneur Network back then. And it was a high quality show. It helped that my business partner at the time, Nick Nanton, I did some of the biggest documentaries. So he's very known. He's done with Tony Robbins. He's done with Chris Voss. He's done with some of the athletes. But so it helped that a guy had a street cred. So I was in business with the right people. So we got that distribution deal. Now, that's how I look at it. But I will say to anybody out there, because I was always stuck on, I need to get the Netflix deal. I need to get this. In some cases, okay, that could make sense. But there's cases where you create a high quality video series content and a Netflix deal could mean they give you minimal money and they own it and you can do nothing with it. Literally, like it might be on their platform. Not many people, they determine who's going to really see it or not. You could go that route. I'm a big advocate of creating content and self-distributing your own ways. You can now, the beautiful thing is now I have access. I'm a shareholder in a TV network called Bespoke TV. And so we have access to these different platforms.
Yeah.
But before I had that access, I was the advocate of, hey, why don't you post in your social media? Hey, why don't you put it out? You could have it in a campaign where you lead traffic to a campaign. They give you their email address and then you can show them the film. Or you could do, the Facebook Watch now, or just posting it on content. Like taking the content you created, multi-distributing it, and then you own the content, and then you can use that content to grow your business. That's what I did. I took that plan. Amazon Prime was a great asset back in 2019 when we did a theater premiere. Then we distributed a show called Success in Your City through there. And that was amazing because everybody had Prime. Everybody knew Prime. And they went to it. It's like, it was cool seeing it on the TV, seeing it next to other shows. And then they kind of changed their platform back a year and a half ago, where they took basically certain kind of content, unless you were with a big production company, you couldn't self-distribute on there. There's ways around it. And overnight, our content for our show was taken down. And somebody's like, I can't watch your show. I'm like, what? And so that's when I had to make a pivot back then. So I went on a rant there, but
no.
To sum it up, don't feel like you need the okay or justification from a big network to get your content out there. You can create it and self-distribute yourself with your own audience and use that to grow and get it out there. Because if people don't know about what you have, how are you going to grow it?
Let's talk about that audience. I mean, that's something everybody's craving for. Everybody's competing with building up an audience. What are your points with, or like kind of little tidbits with building up an audience?
Get the right audience. So many people feel like they need millions of followers. They need all these people, which nothing wrong with that, as long as they're the right followers. I've been around the YouTubers. I've seen the people with those big followers, and it does something for them, as long as it's the right people. I believe in having the right followers who are ideal based on what you want to achieve. So like in business, let's say my ideal client is a CEO of a company that does 10 million a year and they're looking to scale. Well, if I have 50 to 100 to 1,000 of those people follow me, that is a multi-million-dollar business
Yeah.
versus having 100,000 followers that range from 15 years old to 30 years old who are never going to buy from me. And their followers, they can like and comment, but from a business standpoint, it's not really going to do much for me. Maybe down the road as I get older, but I really believe in having the right followers, the right viewers versus having a bunch of followers. And we live in a world, as you know, where people can just buy followers, buy likes, buy these things, and maybe it makes their ego feel better and perception what people see. But the people that know the game,
Yeah.
like me, it's like I have no desire in that
Yeah.
because it's not. I don't need that justification.
No, I love that. I love that. One thing about you, and you've mentioned this a few times, is surrounding yourself with the right people and surrounding
Yeah.
yourself with individuals that could propel you or propel your career, or you can learn or get mentored. Let's talk about people that have done that in your career, and let's talk about the importance of that.
Yeah. So for one, my first mentor was my father.
Yeah.
He taught me business, and then a second mentor I had was a guy named Cactus Jack Behringer. He's a famous inventor. He's the guy that led me to Think and Go Rich.
Yeah.
And then, in a way, Napoleon Hill is no longer with us, but
Yeah.
Napoleon Hill was a mentor to me through his book and his readings.
I always say, wait, before you say that, I always say indirect mentoring. That's one thing you've mentioned a couple of books, and I think the importance of indirect mentoring is so valid because nowadays anybody could go to a bookstore. If you don't have the money to spend on a mentor, $30 copy of a book, like you said, and you could intake so much knowledge, right? So sorry for cutting you off. I just wanted to throw that in.
No, so true.
Yeah.
Indirect. I mean, I'm reading books. I'm investing in master classes, training, because I want to constantly invest in my brain and knowledge and be on top of my game.
Yeah.
If there was one specific person that had the biggest impact, and now who's my business partner today, it would be Kevin Harrington. He was a pioneer of the infomercial. He got on Shark Tank for a couple seasons, and he's had massive success. And so Kevin he started as I read his books. I saw his stuff. I saw him on Shark Tank. And then eventually my mentor, Cactus Jack Behringer, had done a deal with him on Shark Tank. And I knew I was in proximity. I had invested in Cactus Jack years ago, a lot of money to get him as a mentor, which, by the way, back then, everybody thought it was like a scam. They didn't understand self-development.
Yeah.
For me, right out of college, I dropped 10 grand cash and I paid this guy every month to be in proximity and get him as a mentor. And so at the time it hurt, but I knew the value. And eventually with proximity, I got to Kevin Harrington. I hired him to speak my event. I invested in him. I helped him. But I knew if I wanted to be the best I could be, I wanted to find somebody that already achieved it. He had done it in his own way. Known investor, known advisor, TV production, shows. And so I found a way to get into business with him and bring value to him, which ultimately got me the knowledge, got me to spend more time with him, which we started doing business deals together. And then opened up a network to so many other things. And so and what I learned directly from him is the power of a fair deal, having a fair deal that's a win-win for both sides, and then also a dream team. You need to have your dream team around you that can make you perform at the highest level and do what you do best. And when you don't, you have other people around you.
So when was the first opportunity or deal that you did with Kevin?
2015. I hired him to speak for one of my events. And by the way, it was in 3 payments, and I had the first one, didn't have the second one. I was ready to sell my pickup truck, the F-150 pickup truck, to pay the fee at the time. But hey, when you go all in, things happen for you, and I figured it out and it worked. And that was my first deal I did with them.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the struggles behind the scenes that people, everybody thinks you get from here to here. They don't understand the pits and the valleys along the way, right? Let's talk about that as an entrepreneur. But I've been self-employed for 27 years. I have a couple corps. I mean, you have the wins, you have the losses. You're hoping you have more wins stacked over losses at the end of the day. Let's talk about the losses. Let's talk about the reality of give me some losses in your life and when it comes to business, and let's talk about the reality of it, right? I mean, it's not always wins, and those losses are the ones that propel you, right? If you actually sit back and look at all those moments, right?
I mean, There's multiple in my career.
Yeah,
There's a saying,
every entrepreneur, of course. Yeah.
and there's a little saying, for every level, there's another devil.
Yeah. Yeah.
As you achieve more, let's say, so-called success and money and all that, there's more obstacles, but opportunity. My beginning, I guess, struggles or just kind of like tough times were 2015. I was sleeping in my truck sometimes. I was traveling the country, podcasting, interviewing people.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to make excuse. I didn't have the money to go to a conference or go interview somebody. And I wanted to build relationships, just like us on the show right now. And so instead of like making it the excuse, I slept in my truck to save money. I ate canned food or $5 footlongs, and I bootstrapped to be able to get into these opportunities. And then that was one kind of going in that journey, figuring things out. But where my biggest like kind of rock bottom hit is, most people don't realize, is it wasn't that long ago. Did the TV show Success in Your City in 2018. We traveled the country. We're funding this show with our own money and sponsors. We're also running businesses, but then a bunch of things hit. Had to buy out a business partner. I had another thing go wrong. Basically, all things went at once where I was almost bankrupt. And I was in a position where create this show, get it out there, and then I'm like, oh, I lost everything. I lost the land I owned. I lost my car got repossessed. I had debt collectors calling me. My relationship with my wife wasn't good. And every day you wake up and you wonder, how the hell am I going to get out of this situation? Yeah. And all you do is you keep going. Yeah. You keep pushing forward. And so it's very humbling. And I really believe those experiences that I had is a competitive advantage to allow you to become even more successful. Those of you that haven't really experienced it, maybe you aren't pushing far enough, or I don't know, it didn't come to your own area. And so for me, that changed me. It made me wiser. It made me look at things differently. It made me appreciate things. Yeah. And then when I did make money, gratitude, being grateful. And so those are the low moments not everybody talks about. And they can be, I don't want to say depressing, but they can be very hard on your mental health. And the thing is, we're tough people, right? We don't want to talk about it. But it happens every single day to entrepreneurs all over. And unless you have a core group you can trust, like who do you talk to? Yeah. Because they think you're crazy. So yeah.
No, I love it. With yourself, when you're going through those moments, and you're obviously still single, I'm assuming, when you're living in your truck and you're doing all this stuff. How long have you been married for?
5 years come October.
5 years. I'm going on to 20 years already, buddy. 20
Congrats,
years.
Man.
This September, 20 years married. Do you have any children?
Zero, no kids.
No kids. But it's when you're having those low moments, and did you have anyone that you could recall that you could just grab the phone call and just when you're having those low moments, you could just pick up the phone and talk to? Was there friends? Was there family? Was there something? Or you just did this on your own? You just put your head down and grind it through and knew there was going to be, the sun's going to rise tomorrow and there's going to be a better day, and just keep going and going and going. And then eventually things started coming in a more positive way.
Earlier on, when I was younger, I held it in because the pride, I didn't want to share it. But then at 29, I'm 33 now. At 29 is when I almost lost it all. Yeah. I did open up to a select few people because I didn't know what to do. Yeah. And I was never asking for money. I was asking for advice and guidance to figure out how to get out of the hole I put myself into. And it was me, it wasn't nobody else. And so accountability for what I did. And it was good to know I had those people. I mean, it wasn't easy, and you do got to watch too. It's hard too, because I was already I had seen success, but then lost it and seen success. But when you're seen as this person, we had a show, won some Emmys, speaking, and you're speaking on a stage in front of a group, but at any moment your car could get repossessed, or you don't know if you don't get a deal in that room that you're not going to have food or you're going to get evicted. And it's a weird feeling. You almost feel like a fraud. And what helped me get over it is the fact of, hey, I'm here now. This is temporary. I'm going through the valley of hell. I'm going to get out of it. but my message and my ability to communicate now and help people, no matter what's happening to me right now, it's not about me, it's about helping them. And I can help them and take this temporary, like uncomfortable feeling. Eventually I'll get through it. And I did. I got through it. But it's not easy. It's a mind fuck. It
Yeah.
mentally screws with you in the process. But anybody that's listening that can relate to me, hey, call me up. I would love to have conversation, because it definitely makes you stronger, and it helps you with telling more stories in the future.
Yeah. I mean, let's be realistic. Any true entrepreneurs has stories like that in one way or another, right? I mean, they've
Yeah.
had losses, they've had moments where they're just looking to pay their next credit card, or they're trying to pay the next
Yeah.
bill. It's just reality, right? And the ones that stick through it and really learn to pivot, are not scared, like I said earlier, to ask questions, to put themselves around the right mentors, to learn, to keep going. Those are the ones that fail. The ones that are not fearful are the ones that succeed, like yourself. So let's talk about one thing you said there, and you didn't even really talk about. You said a comment there, and it just rang something in my mind where this industry, when whether you're dealing with investors, or you're dealing with motivational speakers, or standing on the stage, there's a lot. There's a lot of people, and it's such a busy industry right now. Just so everybody's trying to jump on the bandwagon to trying to profit from motivational speaking, or trying.
Yeah.
How, as a consumer, how do you get through all that noise? How do you know what's legit? How do you know what's real? How do you know what's stuff? Because there's so many out there. Just I sometimes I sit there and I'm just like I've mentored, God, 66, 67 entrepreneurs in the last few years. I never charge a penny. Young entrepreneurs, I take them on. I had one call me last night. I was on the phone for like an hour and a half with them. And I just love doing it, because there's a few clients I've taken over the years I've charged, but they're more business people. But I just love working with younger entrepreneurs. I have other companies. We design, manufacture boxing, martial art equipment. We do properties. We do all this stuff. So I don't need to make money on the coaching aspect. So I do it more just to help young entrepreneurs. But there's a lot of guys out there. I'm sitting there and watching through social media, and we're like, man, half these guys they've never accomplished nothing. They're trying to sell this, and they've never started a business on their own. They've never lost. They never went through sitting in their car. Like, they don't have that life experience to actually teach. How does a consumer get through all that noise, and really find truly people that are going to help them?
Yeah. I made comments before that I said, until you, it's not only, let's say, making millions of dollars, but until you go lose hundreds of thousands of dollars or almost go bankrupt, um, I don't know if you're in a position to really be a source of information, because there's a lot of lessons to be learned there.
Yeah.
There are a lot of self-proclaimed experts out there that are jumping on the bandwagon. And the thing that I can't stand is when people are showboating, and it's like, oh, I got the car, I got the jet, and all these different things. There's ways to have a facade and show around that, where they're renting it for the day or whatever they're doing. And there's people that are real too.
Yeah.
And usually I can read right through that. I would say this for anybody that's looking at that stuff: just do your research and look and see. I mean, you can find stuff about people easily online. You can Google their name, look at their profiles, look at all their profiles, and see their content and see what they're consistently saying. And usually you can read it in their eyes. You can see it in their being, like
Yeah.
if they're real or not. And and then find people, like, again, I go to, like, who do you want to become?
Yeah.
Find somebody who's already achieved it, and usually they're more seasoned. Like, my mentors are twice my age, so they've seen it.
Yeah.
They've had their success, and I can learn from them. And there's very few people my age that I hang out with, because it's just a kind of different kind of stage for most people. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if the answer is the question, but it's it's there's a lot of fakes out there. There's a lot of bullshit.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that think they know it all, but actually, if you jump on a call with them and ask them really technical questions, you could probably find out real quick if they're the real deal or not, based on how they communicate. If it's just all high level and kind of like pie in the sky, or if it's actually, here's technically exactly what we do.
Yeah.
And you can read based on this eyes, where their eyes are going and their conviction in their face, if they're real or not.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Let's go back to, with yourself, like you said, right out of college, you started having this vision of wanting to get on stage and trying to find.
Yeah.
like it's not something a lot of young individuals coming out of school want to push towards. I mean, nowadays a little bit more, but I mean, when you're 21, it's a totally career that you wouldn't really envision seeing. Like what drives you to start wanting to get on stage and wanting to do all that?
So it wasn't what you would think. And it wasn't really I was desiring to get on stage back then. So I it goes back to my childhood. You look at anything in a childhood kind of
Yeah,
formed you for the good and bad of who you are.
yeah,
And so when I was a kid, I was born with a speech impediment. I had a lisp. And so I got bullied because I couldn't speak like other people, which frustrated me. And I knew one day I wanted to be great in sales. And in this case back then was in the ice business.
yeah.
I realized if I want to be great at sales, I need to master my communication skills. And so I practiced in front of the mirror as a young kid. I did go to speech class too. It didn't really help me. It was more my own self training. And then I knew I hated speaking in front of groups, like even 10 people. I started putting myself in positions where I forced myself to speak in front of groups, just in high school and then going to college. And by the time I was 15, I lost my speech impediment. But I constantly put myself in situations that were so uncomfortable for me, but it forced me to become a better speaker. And so even in college, I mean, I got a D in English and I was failing my speech comp class. And in order for me to pass the class, I went and got extra credit by going to guest class presentations. That's actually how I met my first mentor.
Yeah.
And so that's how I got more into like being in front of the groups. But at age 21, the only reason I was speaking in front of groups is because I was pitching my invention at the time. I was pitching in front of groups, investors, and I was trying to get people to give me money. And as I started speaking and pitching, people said, "Man, you're like inspiring," and all these things. And I started listening to them. I'm like, "Oh, interesting." And then I started doing more of that. So I wasn't like, "Hey, I want to be a motivational speaker." It just I was pitching in front of groups and I was looking to achieve my goal. And then people just said, "Hey, you're a good speaker. You're inspiring." And then I had more opportunities. I didn't know you could get paid to speak. So
Yeah.
I started doing more of that, which helped me build my brand, but also put me in front of the right audiences, and now in some cases, I'm speaking in front of a group of investors. And based on what I say, determines if they're going to give us $1 million.
Yeah, I love that. I love it. You said your first invention. What was that?
It was called Arctic Stick, and it was a product to cool and flavor drinks. It was reusable, and it was got a patent trademark. I invested 100 grand into it. I never generated more than $10,000.
So,
But
so what was it, like an ice cube almost? What is it?
it's like trying to think. It's basically it looks like a bullet almost.
Okay.
You pop the top, you put a liquid in, close it, put it in your freezer. It's like a stick of ice, but it's contained in the container, so don't dilute your drink.
Yeah.
But I made it so you could twist it, and there was 4 holes at the center that it would disperse if you had any kind of flavor in there into the drink. And so this was my way of I was trying to figure out how to make more money in the ice business. So I invented a new product. The thing was I pursued it, everything else. But while pursuing it, I realized there's other easier ways for me to make money. I lost really my desire for it. I still have it and all that. But that actually led me to crowdfunding and led me to video production. And really a lesson there is temporary defeats. There's a lesson to learn that can give you an idea that can lead you to make more money.
Yeah.
And so that was my endeavor that no, I didn't make money on that very specific thing, but it led me down a path that allowed me to make money.
Yeah. You take the positive and everything. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
So you're how old when you started inventing that? You're
I
19,
was
20?
I was 20, 21, 20 or 21.
So that was your first true, I mean, obviously working for your dad, but that was your true first entrepreneurial like
Yeah.
adventure. Okay. I started
Well,
my first was 17. I started a security company. I had all my buddies in high school working for me. I had a security company at 17. That was my first
oh wow.
gig as an entrepreneur. And then at 19, I ran a consulting fitness business. So I've always it's the same thing. I get bored of stuff. And it was crazy is my main company called Komora, where we've been running now, January 20th was 17 years. This is probably the first only business I've actually kept. And because usually I just get bored of stuff and I'll either try to exit out of it or I'll just let it go kind of thing. Right. So Is there any other stories like that? Is there any other things that you try to adventure in an event?
Well, so in college, I sold called apple pie, but it was moonshine. I was selling. It's basically Everclear with apple juice. I was selling in the dorm rooms. This is illegal, but
Yeah.
so that was like kind of an endeavor. And then I used to. I mean, I throw on events around the country now that are for self help
Yeah.
and speakers and musicians. But back then, I would throw big parties where I would charge at the door $5-10 per cup. And then I got the crappiest vodka, Kool-Aid, make these big jungle juices, we call them. And then I would make money at the door from my parties. So
Yeah.
I would create parties and make money. But then that ended on some bad fights, and I realized I got to get out of that business.
It's still crazy when you sit back. And you said you're 30 now?
33. Yeah.
33. So I'm 46. So I mean, you go back I think sometimes I sit down and I think of all the stories and exactly you said, like the hustling moments. I mean, I remember even as a kid, Brendan, my dad, I was into sports cars, and my dad would drop me off on a Saturday morning at a sports card show. And back then, and there was a period when like 5-6 years, they were so popular, they would drop me off and I would have like 20 bucks in my pocket. And I found a way to hustle. I knew which packs to buy. I would buy these packs, open them up, start selling. But I would leave there in like 2 hours, like 100 bucks in my pocket. And that would be my spending money. I was like at 12, 13 years old. And that would be my spending money for the week. And it's crazy. It's just, you sit back and you start looking at those moments of like being a natural entrepreneur. This is that hustle, that drive to try to just hustle and make money, which is so funny when you think back. Where'd you meet your wife?
I met her in Winona, Minnesota. I was on a river trip, and we just stopped in that town because that was the town that there was a college. It was a college town for women. And so I met her randomly for like 10 minutes, got her number, and she was down in Florida. And that's how our journey started. We talked for like 3 months on Skype, and then eventually we got into business together. And
you got into business together. That was before.
Yeah, she saw the ups and downs of me not having anything.
What was the business you guys got together?
So first company we tried to pursue was called Adams Product Innovation, which launched products. That failed miserably. And then we did the TV show together. She was my co-host. And then we now do Rise and Record together. But sometimes it wasn't even being business together, but she was the one that was like really my coach in a way, like helping me see things I didn't see. But she got to go for the ride for the tough times too, because it's not easy. And it's definitely not easy in a relationship. Yeah. I'm sure you know.
Yeah. It's crazy that you, I mean, as you're saying that, I'm just reflecting here. Like, I've been married for 20 years and my wife has never, ever worked for me, never worked in the business. She's very independent. She has her own 9-to-5 job. I'm cool with that. We married for 20 years. We don't have one bank account together. She has her bills, I have my bills, and we never argue about money. We get along. So it works for everybody. I was gonna ask you, like, how is that? And it's kind of like a question that you're probably gonna have to answer in a very positive way. How is it working with your wife and as a business partner?
It's not easy.
Okay.
I am not an easy person to work with. But I would say this, like, whether it's business, it's relationships, it all comes down to open communication.
Yeah.
And constantly communicating. And then also the next thing, which I don't really have the greatest answer for, but it is learning to separate what is business and then what is relationship. And I have yet to really 100% figure that all out. But that is finding a way to separate and turn it off, because
how do you turn that off? How do you turn that off when you come home? Because because it's so easy to sit. Like, I come home and my wife tells her about her day. I got 15 and my daughter's turning 17. So I got 2 teenage kids at home. So we have a busy life, dog, 2 kids, sports. And so when I come home, business usually stays at the office. When you come home, you're sitting at dinner in front of your wife. You guys are business partners. How does that not still continue at home? Or does it continue at home?
It does. And then I think it's spurred. Like, there's times where I can do it and there's times I just don't, because maybe I just don't know how. But there's times where it's like, hey, let's say go on a date night and we're going to do this, and you just focus on that and like, hey, we're gonna go have a drink, we're gonna go listen to some music or something.
Yeah.
So there's times I would say that I'm good, and there's times where I'm horrible. It depends at what I'm focusing on, what I'm working at that time. So I don't have the 100% answer. Still working on it, but yeah, at least I'm acknowledging it.
This is turning into a counseling conversation here.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. I love it. 2 Emmys. I'm just jumping out everywhere. When as you were saying things, I wrote things down. When did those happen, and how did you use that to propel other opportunities?
Yeah. So first one was from our show Success in Your City. It was based on the story we did on Shea Hillenbrand, the baseball player.
Oh, Shay's one of my buddies.
You got to be kidding me.
Oh, Shay's a good buddy of mine. Yeah, we talk all the time. Yeah, he's a good friend of mine. I'm on a board of directors with Shay, men's board of directors. It's funny because we've been talking for the longest time. That I'm a big baseball guy to start a baseball podcast together. But he's a really good friend of mine.
Shea Hillenbrand, and we filmed in Scottsdale, Arizona. So that was back in 2018.
Okay.
And then the other one was Red Flags, which is a story on my wife's story, which is overcoming drug addiction and domestic violence. And so that was back in 2021. And so very powerful project. So those were the 2 projects. And how has it helped? I mean, not many people win those kind of things. And at the end of the day, it's just a freaking plaque, a trophy. But I will say from a wow factor, like there's a best-selling author. There's all these different things. And Emmy is a very difficult thing to achieve. And I did put everything I had into it. People are just like, whoa, like it'll get you meetings. It will get you deals. People like, oh, he's an Emmy award-winning producer. And people talk about you and say that. And I'm not like one saying, hey, look, won Emmys. They'll be, dude, Brandon T. Evans is an Emmy award-winning producer. He's done this. It's something that gets people's attention, which will get you meetings and also allow you to charge a lot more for what you do.
Yeah.
It's powerful. It's a great branding asset.
Huge. So let's talk about that, Shay. How did you get that story? Like, obviously I know everything about Shay. So how did you get that story? When did you meet him? Like, how did that come together? I'm gonna call him after this. This is pretty cool.
Yeah,
I had no clue. Now I'm gonna go. Where can I see this doc?
So it was Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
Now you can't actually watch it right now. We're in the process of in June releasing on DirecTV. So through the network.
Is there a direct link you can send me to watch it?
I can send it to you.
Okay. I'll do that.
I'll send it to you.
So how did you meet? Like, go back to that. How did you meet Shay, and how did that all come about?
It's crazy. So I was at the premiere. We did the Think and Go Rich movie. So I was one of the producers of the movie Think and Go Rich Legacy.
Yeah.
And we're at the premiere at LA Live. And that night, I'm sitting with a friend, somebody who was in my mastermind. And I said, hey, we're about to go on this journey and create the show around the country. And she said, hey, come to Scottsdale, Arizona. I will put a dinner together for you and introduce you to some people. Did the dinner. And at the dinner, I met somebody that said, hey, I had this baseball player that joined working with me in real estate. Yeah. And I think they would be a great person for this story. Get a call, a couple of calls later, that became our story. When we were in Arizona for 6 weeks, we spent time with them, filmed. You can see on camera where I can't hit with the baseball.
You did the whole thing? Yeah. I love it. I love it.
But yeah, so that's how it came about. And who would have known that would have became a Emmy award-winning story?
I had no clue. Oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah, he's got a crazy story. Crazy story. Great guy. Incredible guy. Yeah. That's awesome. So legacy. I mean, where do you see yourself going? You're still obviously quite young and you're doing a lot of investing and stuff like that. Like, when's enough's enough? When as an entrepreneur, is there a moment when it's like, okay, this is where I want to get to, and this is where I'm going to start cutting back? Like, is this something where you just full steam ahead and just let it go kind of thing? Because I've talked about it a million times to my wife, and I'm like, oh, I want to slow down. I want to things. I'm 46. We got a lot of rental properties. We're doing okay financially. And then a pandemic hit, and I sat at home for 3 weeks, and I pulled my hair out. And I'm like, I can't do this. And then you realize that like you just keep going, you keep going, and in life sometimes hits curveballs where unexpected shit happens. Like I mean, people that know my story, like in November, I got diagnosed with cancer,
Oh, wow.
and it was a holy fuck moment. And I did what I had to do. I did my treatment. I did my surgery. I'm knock on wood clear right now. I mean, it's going to be the next life journey for me. But it's life. Life hits you sometimes, and you sit back and like, you know, and maybe it's time to sit back. And then boom, reality as an entrepreneur kicks in. You see opportunities, and I was on the phone last night with an opportunity for another project. I'm like, oh, why am I doing this? I promised myself I'm not going to do it. When's enough's enough as an entrepreneur? Like, is it ever run through your head?
For me, I mean, I think I just always want to get better.
Yeah,
And I think maybe part of my own obstacle for myself is maybe it's never enough.
yeah.
Um, and that's why you keep striving for these accolades, these awards, and everything else. But I personally, I just want to keep mastering who I am, what I do,
Yeah.
and enjoying my business life and growth and success there, but also my relationship and family,
Yeah.
and keep shooting higher. So, but I'm in a different stage. I always say everybody should ask yourself what success means to them, and what success means to me at 25 is different now at 33, and when I turn 40, it'll be different, and so on.
Yeah.
So, right where it's at right now, I'm in this conquer the world kind of thing. I want to just keep being the best I can be and perform at the highest level, and keep growing. But you have me on the show in 3 years, I might change my mind. I don't know. But right now, it's this trajectory of just keep going, keep growing, be the best me. Don't compare myself to others, but look at how I can continuously be a better me.
Yeah. But what about family? It is something that you guys talk about you would like to start one day?
No desire now. No, we're very happy with our freedom,
Okay.
and we go and see family and things, but we like us being us and doing what we do.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, you have to do what's right for you. Where could our guys get a hold of you? What could they follow? What information that they could reach
Yeah,
out for your events and all that stuff? Give me some information about yourself.
yeah. So I'm easy to find. I'm at BrandonTAdams.com. On my social media is at Brandon T. Adams. And then if anybody wants to go hang out with us at our event, Rise and Record, just go to riseandrecord.com.
Where's your next event
It's,
being held at?
yeah, so I got events every month, but the big annual event is in Nashville.
Yeah.
It is October 17th through the 19th, and that's the one we put a lot of time and effort into. Every year we bring in a great group of people, and it's in downtown Nashville, Tennessee this year.
Very cool. So you do events. How big are these monthly events? Are they just like very intimate
So
and small? Are they private, or are they part of a group? Like how does this all work?
so I outside of me speaking to groups, I do quarterly masterminds. So it's 15 or 20 of us. We were in Montana last month, Florida. We're going
Yeah.
to Iowa next month, and we bring in a film crew, and we capture content with the people, and we have fun. So that's
Yeah.
one side of it. We do high level masterminds, and then I'll do workshops. So like I'm just later this month doing a workshop that's all around branding, where I do a small group and they come in, I help them. It's for me, it's constantly staying on top of my game
Yeah.
and challenging this and
Yeah.
teaching.
Yeah.
And sometimes there's random ones where people, I was in Boise, Idaho a month ago and got brought in to speak, and that was fun. But
Yeah, very, very cool. I appreciate it, buddy. This has been fun. This has been a great conversation.
likewise,
I'm sure there's a lot more to happen in your future. So I'm sure I'll have you back on again. Like I said, we started this podcast during the pandemic just for fun, right? And I never
yeah,
thought it would explode the way it has. I mean, I took off 4 months. We were at episode 204. I took off 4 months to obviously deal with my health and all that. I just came back with 2 episodes. And in these 2 episodes, we had what was her name? Nita. Oh my God, I just drew a blank on her last name. We had the girl Anita, and then we had Leela Brada, which was an old retired bodybuilder that started Lean Body. incredible entrepreneur. And both those episodes together in a matter of 2 weeks, they hit over a little over 250,000 views and listens right through the platform. So
Wow.
it's loaded. So it's nice to get back to this, and you'll be airing the next week or so. So I'll let you know all that information. But this is awesome. So I appreciate you. I appreciate you coming on, and I'm glad we connected. And I'm sure we'll keep in touch.
Likewise, buddy.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, brother.
Thank you.